Welcome back to the Mainstream with myself and John Roskam. John, our Prime Minister has just been endorsed by Hamas. What do you reckon of that?
Yeah, I'm not sure where Hamas stands on a 4-day work week, but they have certainly endorsed the Labor government's recognition of Palestine, and the Prime Minister told us that Hamas would absolutely not want this. Less than a day later, our Prime Minister was contradicted.
Is he lying or naive, do you reckon?
Both.
Both. Is this the first time
a politician has lied or been naive?
Is this the first time a terrorist organisation has endorsed a sitting Prime Minister of our country?
Yeah, may well be to my knowledge.
I can't remember any others.
Yeah, there may be others, but not to my knowledge.
Not to my knowledge. And then we had the 90,000 people protesting, demonstrating on the Sydney Harbour Bridge, which is not only a national icon but an international symbol of Australia. And you wrote in your piece in the Financial Review, which was very well received and had a lot of interest and traction, that this basically demonstrated a very visible failure of multiculturalism in Australia. What did you mean by that?
Multiculturalism is based on a couple of principles and presumptions. One of those is that the enmities, the animosities, the hatreds of foreign lands, of old lands to which people have come to Australia, are not debated on our streets. We can put that behind us to live together as a people from many different countries. And if we don't put it behind us, we can't live together. And it's been demonstrated, and 90,000 people across the Sydney Harbour Bridge showed it again, that it's not being put behind us, that we had Labor and Liberal politicians marching in front of an image of an Iranian dictator that is hostile to every one of the concepts of freedom, imprisoning women, murdering homosexuals, and this seemed to be embraced by a large part of our political class. And the backlash is going to come because the public understand we can't live like this.
Well, the backlash is here, and that's not just a theory. We know it. We commissioned at the IPA a survey of independent marketing research firm Dynata, who does a lot of our surveys. I think we've talked about a couple of those over the past episodes. This was just over 1,000 Australians in a nationally representative sample, where we asked questions about the flag and in relation to the criminalisation of flag burning. And we asked this because flag burning has been taking place, including in Melbourne, by protesters who have also been saying abolish Australia. So we asked, one of the questions here was, do you believe that the burning of the Australian flag should be a criminal offence? So you can agree, disagree, or unsure. So what do you think the share of the total population is that believe burning the flag should be a criminal offence?
50-50?
77%.
Really?
77%.
That would have been old people, though.
Well,
that would have been
so what?
IPA members and Sky After Dark viewers who still like to think there is something to Australia to hold to.
Well, guess what it was for 18 to 24-year-olds? You think it would be pretty low?
You'd think it would be pretty low. You'd think that woke, indoctrinated young people would embrace the burning of the flag as an expression of their freedom and identity.
76% support it. So the nation
support the
criminalisation, not the burning of the flag, the criminalisation of the burning of the flag.
What percentage?
76.
So the same proportion of young people support the criminalisation of the burning of the flag as the general population.
That's right, John.
That's the backlash coming.
That's the backlash here. And not only that, we also asked, do you think that people who burn the flag should face jail time? And 63% of the population said yes. Do you think young people were higher or lower than the nationwide average?
Lower.
Higher by 1 point. So
You're joking.
Within the margin of error, yeah. I accept 64%. So it's about the same again. So this argument...
So what does this say?
Well, this says that Australians support the flag. It's something that unites us and brings us together. I think it also shows that this is a line in the sand moment for our country. I would not have, 10 years ago, I would not have commissioned this research. I don't personally support people going to jail for burning the flag, but I do now support the criminalisation of that action, and I would not have supported that 10 years ago, because 10 years ago, who were the kind of people burning the flag? It was some activist on a university campus wanting attention. You go, fine, that's not a threat to our way of life.
We'll ignore you.
We'll ignore you. It doesn't mean anything. Who cares? Just get on with our lives. But it means something different now. And there are no political consequences for this. In fact, there's a permission structure within which this has taken place. Our Prime Minister won't even stand in front of the Australian flag, routinely disrespects it. Jacinta Allen, Premier of Victoria, says burning the flag's deplorable. Well, what are you going to do about it? Absolutely nothing. So I think it's time to criminalise the burning of the flag. What do you think?
No.
Why is that?
I'm still going to hang to the last remnants of liberal democracy in Australia. I am going to argue, and I believe, as uncomfortable as I am with the burning of the flag, as uncomfortable as I am with what is happening to our culture, changing before our eyes, our regard for history, our regard for ourselves and who we are, but I would be deeply uncomfortable with that. It's abhorrent, it's deplorable, but this is the debate through thousands of years of history. I don't believe that we defend the way of life that we enjoy by doing these sorts of things, as difficult as it is. We don't support liberal democracy by undermining liberal democracy, and this is what I think it would be.
But I think liberal democracy is already dying. And I think that because of this reason, which is that liberal democracy is partly based upon having a set of institutions, our democracy, rule of law, legal institutions that take us all as equals.
And shared assumptions.
Shared understandings of the world. And it provides a shell within which we can go about our lives within a given set of boundaries.
And that we can live together.
We can live together. But you cannot be tolerant towards intolerance. And that is the potential failure of liberal democracy. So I don't think that we can keep going down this path of providing this neutral framework of saying, well, it's all okay, it's all fine, everybody has these rights, when clearly there is a admittedly small but nonetheless very influential minority in our society that are completely undermining the values of liberal democracy.
Which they are, and I think the values of liberal democracy in Australia were undermined fundamentally, as we've talked about, or attempted to be undermined, when the Labor government pursued the idea that race should be in the Constitution and different people should have different political rights according to their race, and 60% of Australians said no. But I am, as you can tell, I'm very uneasy about not just the principle of criminalising and perhaps imprisoning people who burn the flag, but the precedent that it sets, the tit-for-tat process that it then leads to. I would like to try everything else first, and there's something else about criminalising the burning of the flag, something else about criminalising so-called hate speech. That doesn't change what people think. It doesn't change what people believe. We have a much bigger challenge about how some Australians now think about their country, how they think about other Australians, and how they would seemingly, coming back to where we started, seemingly accept the support of a terrorist organisation. I think Australia's challenges are fundamental, they are deeper, they are deep-seated. I don't think this is the way to do it. And I've got another argument against criminalising the burning of the flag is that's almost trivialises the challenge of the problem. And to do that is to say, we can fix this country with laws. That's the same approach that says we can, and I wrote about this in the Fin Review article, that's the same approach that says, if we make offending people on the basis of their religion a crime, as Chris Minns did after, one day of debate in Parliament, that will fix the problem. No, it won't. All it does is it exacerbates the problem. It brings to the legal process entities from overseas. And I can just see the cause célèbre of the first person burning the flag in the Sydney Opera House forecourt off to jail.
You make a good point. And I think one of the positives out of all of these issues we're having is that we're having these debates about important issues. And I think it's forcing Australians for the first time in a long time to think about what does it actually mean to be an Australian? What kind of country do we want to live in? And so if we as a country are able to get through this, we will be a better country for it because we've had to go through these debates. And I think every now and again you have to relitigate these arguments. And that was one of the benefits of the Voice debate was It was a single issue, a fundamental issue, and we learned, Australians had to think about, oh yeah, well, why do I believe this? Well, because I believe...
Why do I believe in equality?
Why do I believe that?
Why do I believe that everyone gets the same rights regardless of their race or background or ethnicity?
So that's, I think, the positive that can be taken.
And then, and that is funny, you should use that terminology. So the terminology I love to use is from Ronald Reagan's inauguration speech as governor, California. Every generation has to fight for its freedoms again. And I think we've talked about this, the idea that we think the battle for freedom of speech is won, the battle for freedom of religion is won, the battle for liberal democracy, for equality, for tolerance is won. No, every generation has to fight it again and again and again. It is never, never won. And conservative parties around the world are discovering it's never won. And that's why, I hold people like J.D. Vance in such high regard, because he understands this.
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
So what's going to be the response of politicians when you release the IPA's?
I think it'll be pretty well received broadly. I mean, Phil Thompson, who's the member for Herbert
in Queensland,
Senator around Townsville, he's a veteran as well. He's got a motion, a private member's motion, that he'll be putting into Parliament in a couple of weeks.
Wow. Is this public?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm not revealing anything out of school here, to criminalise.
Well, I'm just supposed party elders haven't stamped on him and said, we're not having any discussion about culture.
Well, we'll see what happens when he puts that into Parliament. So, and Andrew Hastie has just launched his campaign Together Under One Flag. So there is momentum building within the political.
So let's speculate, and we won't have to speculate for too long, because as you said, if this is allowed to come into the Parliament, it'll be debated. Where will politicians land on this?
Well, because it's a motion, I don't know whether people will be. Most of them won't participate. There'll be a couple that will say something.
They have to be forced to.
Yeah, well, you need to have I don't think you can have a division on a motion, can you? It'd have to be a bill.
I don't know, but you see, isn't this...
But
would it be significant? I want to know where does so I live in Kooyong.
Where does
Monique Ryan stand? On this, where do the Teals stand?
Where do you think she stands?
No, but as we disagree on this. You would vote yes, I'd vote no, but I would like to hear their arguments, and I'm frustrated as a Liberal Party member and supporter by not hearing from Liberal MPs about, for example, where they stand on net zero. So the Liberal Party's got a review on net zero, and I've got people emailing me from around Australia, emailing into their MP saying, where do you stand?
Yeah,
you're a Liberal MP, I voted for you, I've given you money, I handed out a vote card. Just where do you stand? Half of them say, I can't tell you.
Better wait 12 months.
So I can't wait. This will be a big debate.
It will be a big debate. And
the ABC will cover it.
Interestingly, ABC Radio did interview me earlier this week.
I actually asked you that question without knowing the answer.
You did know that.
So I do follow all of your media appearances.
Yeah, so I fully expect you to be totally brief on all of my public undertakings.
So tell me about yours, the ABC on the flag.
That's why I think the flag, the pushback is happening, and the flag stuff is becoming big. Okay, and this follows Australia Day. Australia Day has become big again.
And we're winning.
So we're winning on that.
Yep.
Just like Anzac Day became big again. Yep. And so in our survey, I think we've talked about the Australia, I won't relitigate it all again, but basically it's at a near record high for support of Australia Day on the 26th of January.
Including among young people.
Including among young people that have skyrocketed by about 10 points in their support for it. Yeah. We're seeing it with the flag. So the fact that the ABC Melbourne had me on their drive show, just about 5 minutes, but to talk about the flag and to talk about, why do some Australians like waving the flag? What do you think about it?
Maybe because we like this country.
Yeah, I'm proud of it.
And we're happy that we are
Australia. It is a good flag and it represents a good country. Now, that might be a foreign concept to some, but it was a very fair interview. There was nothing untoward about it. Now, a lot of their listeners completely sounded off and go,
really?
Yeah, bogan, obnoxious bogan, things like that. But the fact that they would even have someone like me on to talk about the flag shows that even the ABC understands that this is a very important issue in the community. So something is happening. So we are winning on the ground, but we're not winning in the political arena yet. Things are going to get a bit more difficult over the next 3 odd years. And the reason for that is I thought...
6.
6, 9, 12.
Well, no, if we We've had 3 years of Labor. Let's say that
Another
in the next
3.
election, which they probably will, so that's 9 years of Labor.
9 years of Labor.
Yeah, so we've got 6 years of difficult times.
Minimum.
Minimum.
I thought after the election, Albo wins by a lot, although the primary vote's very low. I thought there was an opportunity for Albanese to transform into a national leader, to say, okay, I've got to take this very seriously. I've got a very strong mandate. And for him, I thought there was perhaps an opening for him to, change a little bit and broaden himself out. But he has failed. He has comprehensively failed. And Labor governments are very dangerous when they become dominated by sectional interests. And that's been the story of Australia's history. You can see it with bank nationalisation, the attempts post-World War II. We've had good Labor leaders like Bob Hawke who were not sock puppets. Bob Hawke was not a sock puppet to sectional interests. He was somebody, at least publicly, who supported. He used to wear the suits with the Australian flag, very jingoistic, a bit cringy.
I was actually old enough. I was watching him on one of Australia's great days.
1988.
The
Vice
America's
Secretary?
No, well, it was a great day too, the America's Cup.
Yes.
I was actually watching, I think it was Channel 9. I think I was watching, I was watching whatever channel it was on.
Yeah.
I actually remember that like yesterday almost.
Yeah. So some Labor leaders overcome it and some get drawn into it. And unfortunately, Albanese has shown himself to be a sock puppet for narrow sectional interests, and it's getting worse. So at the exact time they have the strongest majority, this government is becoming more dominated by even tinier niche sectional interests. That's what the whole Palestinian thing is being driven by.
And again, as I point out, and others have too, for the first time in Australian history of a Labor government, the socialist left have a majority in the Labor Party caucus. This is and I don't think enough journalists covering politics have discussed the incredible consequences of the socialist left now having majority. Here in Victoria, the socialist left have a majority in the Labor Party caucus, and we can see the consequences. The first consequences are in foreign policy. They will flow and are flowing into economics. They're flowing into a climate change debate. The era of a sensible Labor Party might almost have gone. The Labor right was once some sort of ballast to being sensible. That's gone too. And I don't know whether we would be too far away, and this has been talked about from in an ideal world walking away from the US alliance.
Well, that's what they want. And that I think that will happen. I think the US alliance will probably end whilst there is a Labor government. Because if there is China invades Taiwan, America will go in. Under ANZUS, we need to go in. Albo won't go in. So that it would be over. And I think that will happen. So we'll get back to that. But the other issue related to all of this, John, is, the political system being out of touch with the mainstream and declining trust among society, in our institutions, whether it's the political class or the media and so forth. And you've done some research on this with the Edelman survey, which is a global survey, which is released, I think it's every year.
Every year.
Attitudes of the community towards major, like big business, politics.
NGOs. And I think there's a number of reasons why trust is declining. A failure of government. The fact that the media either don't tell the truth or they don't tell Australians aspects of the truth. And I spoke to this in a piece Paul Kelly did in The Australian last week when he was talking about the future of the Liberal Party, and he talked about policies the Liberal Party need to take forward, and I share those views and many aspects of policy reforms, just lower tax, less red tape and so on. But more fundamentally, I said, and Kelly quoted me saying this, a Liberal Party or any political party has to speak to the very deep, great unease that Australians have about the future. They don't, no politician yet, and there are a number of qualifications to that. I think someone like Jacinta Price or an Andrew Hastie speaks to this. I think Pauline Hanson speaks to this, and because she does, she's lambasted by the media. But there is a very great unease about the future of Australia that politicians are not recognising. So this Edelman Trust survey identified that less than 1 in 5 Australians believe the next generation will be as well off as they are. That's one of the lowest rates in the world.
That's astonishing. What
It is, but it isn't. It is, but it isn't. And it goes to the quality of life that we enjoy, our culture. And I said this in the piece. Australians believe the country is changing before their eyes.
Because it is.
Because it is, and politicians are not identifying that.
And they have no control.
And
this is the feeling, like if you live in a suburb
Yeah.
And you've been there for 30 years,
Yeah.
there would be all kinds of high-rise development going on. The demographics are completely changed. You walk around, you don't
Not allowed to drive a car increasingly.
You can't drive a car.
You can't get your kid into a school. The hospitals are crowded.
There's no green spaces.
There's no spaces.
But the thing is, you might be able to tolerate that if you had been asked. Because if you ask and you vote and you lose, you go, well, at least I had a crack.
And I think
but people aren't asked about this and they don't want it.
Exactly. And that goes to trust in government. And for me, one of the most interesting aspects of this Edelman survey was that out of 28 countries measured English speaking, non-English speaking, Australia had the third lowest trust in the media.
Wow.
In the media. So it was 63% of Australians don't trust the media.
So
the only other countries where there was less trust was South Korea and the UK. You know, we often which is almost, sorry, not South Korea, Japan. South Korea was very close to Australia, but
the UK was lower.
UK was lower, Japan was lower. And we talked the other week about the seismic results in the Japanese election.
Yes.
We've talked about the rise of reform. You know, we tend to laugh at America and Donald. Well, we don't, but so many of the left do. There's more trust by Americans in their media than there is in the Australian media. And of course, as we've been talking about and I've been reading, I can give you a concrete example of what the media are not telling Australians that they need to know and why we shouldn't trust the Australian media, sadly.
Yes. So I'll ask you about that. I wanted to make one observation. So the reason why Americans aren't...
Well, I'll pull out my...
Pull out your file.
Yeah, I'll get ready. I'll get ready and you talk about America.
The reason why Americans have higher trust than us in the media is because their media is more diversified. And when you say media to an American, they now don't think analog TV and newspapers. They think podcasts and all these other things. So that hasn't caught up here. The other point I wanted to make in that Paul Kelly article, I think there were 4 Liberal elders that were quoted that he referred to as Liberal elders. It was John Howard, Peter Costello, Tony Abbott, and yourself.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether I'll go with the term elder.
But you're in good company. But I just want to reinforce your comments. I thought all the comments were excellent by all 4. Your comments were the best because they went beyond the Liberal Party. It's not a Liberal Party problem. It's an Australia problem that we face.
It's a political class problem.
And it's been brewing for a while and it's now coming to a head.
And again, the idea that our political system privileges the 2 major parties, it privileges the media, it privileges the legacy media, politicians from the major parties ring-fence the rules so that new entrants can't join the political process and the system. And that's why we've got this sclerosis in the system.
Exactly. So you've had time to pull your file out. And so this goes to declining trust in the media and the fact that the media has not covered one of the most significant reports that has come out of the United States.
Exactly. And let's just speculate on what could this report be about. So what is a topic that is changing every aspect of how we live, our economy, our society, that's giving governments unprecedented power over our lives? That is
AI.
I'll go on about, our children hear about it every single day. They are being taught to fear for themselves and fear for the future. What could this topic be, Dan?
AI?
No. Social media?
Banning social media, YouTube. No, what is it? Is it something? Does it relate to the lifeblood of our economy, maybe?
Yeah, maybe it relates to, our farmland, to our energy security.
Yeah. Go on, tell me what it is.
Climate change.
Climate change.
How'd you know that?
I didn't know.
You didn't know that?
I can guess.
So, Donald Trump, in his second term, appointed as US Energy Secretary Christopher Wright, who's a scientist, had a long background in energy policy, and he appointed a committee to look at the science of climate change and to look at its impacts on the US climate, what climate change might be doing to the US climate, and to look at the data. He appointed a working group of 5 people. I'll read out their names because many people watching and listening to this podcast will know these people or know of these people. Roy Spencer, who's contributed to the IPA's Climate Change, The Facts, Ross McKittrick, Stephen Coonan, who of course has written a wonderful book on climate change, and you can see my podcast discussion with him from about 2 years ago.
And he was Obama's guy.
He's a Democrat.
He's a Democrat.
These
aren't right, MAGA Republican.
He was a science advisor to the Obama administration. And let's take Coonan's view on climate change, which is most likely happening. There is possibly some impact of humans, but we have many uncertainties around climate change, and climate change science doesn't tell us to radically deindustrialise and put ourselves into poverty. Judith Curry and John Christie were the other members of this group. They put out this 150-page report in July, so a couple of weeks ago, a critical review of impacts of greenhouse gas emissions on the US climate. It's easily found on the internet, even if you use Google. A couple of key conclusions that it made. The first one was from the Energy Secretary himself, was that energy poverty around the world is a pressing problem, far more pressing than dealing with the modelled effects of climate change. But the report goes through the data, and so, for example, it finds that claims of increasing frequency of hurricanes, tornadoes, floods and droughts are not supported by US historical data. Global sea level has risen approximately 8 inches since 1990, but there are significant regional variations. And then US tide gauge measurements in aggregate show no obvious acceleration in sea level rise beyond the historical average rate. Very controversially, although it wasn't controversial until very recently, they talk about how increasing CO2 in the atmosphere leads to the greening of the planet. There's a lot of discussion, a lot of data. Peter Ridd is referenced, the IPA's great man, Professor Peter Ridd. His work on the Barrier Reef is referenced, and it identifies that there's been no substantial change to the health of the Barrier Reef. Their conclusion is there might be some human impact, but we know very little about it. Again, controversially, it says the sun, the source of energy to the planet, might have some impact on our climate.
The sun affects the climate.
Yeah, it might, Dan.
Wow.
Yeah, it might.
Thought that big.
Yeah, well, who would have thought? And this is hugely significant, very important. It's had a lot of publicity around the world. It's had a lot of debate in the US. And how do you think and this comes back to our trust in the media, trust in politicians. How do you think it's been treated by the Australian media, Dan? And you know this is a leading question, and we have prepared your answer.
Well, I would have thought it would be given that this is such an important topic, so
ham it up.
So it's going to have wide-ranging impacts. Such an esteemed panel of people that have contributed from across the political spectrum. I would have thought it would be dominating.
You would have thought Chris Bowen would have put out a press release, but the CSIRO would have condemned it.
I would have thought this would be discussed extensively at the Productivity Roundtable Summit, because this will affect productivity.
That's right.
But how many mentions? Hundreds?
I've done my research. I spent half an hour on Google and Dogpile.
What's Dogpile?
The alternative to Google.
Oh, okay.
You were talking about DuckDuckGo.
DuckDuckGo. I used to use that, but then
I don't know whether that's. I didn't go with DuckDuckGo.
Right.
There's one reference that I could identify that's been made in the Australian media to one of the most important scientific reports on climate change of the last few years. It was by Peter Turchin in the Daily Telegraph.
The People's Paper.
There has been no mention of this very significant, important report in the context of climate change debate dominating every aspect of our political discourse. So why do so many Australians distrust the media? Because of this.
And exactly as we were talking about, this is why the legacy media is in decline and podcasts and alternative information platforms are on the rise, because you do not get that information.
Yeah, and the power of what the Trump administration has done, and people around the world are doing this. You can go to the report yourself, you can download it as I've done, you print it out, you can read it, you can draw your own conclusions. You can look at the data and understand that so much of what our politicians, our media are telling us about climate change is not right.
Well, I can tell you what's going to happen is I've seen the government trying to prepare the ground. So they're going to do some modelling on the cost to the economy of climate change. So they're trying to hedge against modelling that's going to show net zero is destroying it. And they're going to say, oh, yeah, net zero's cost of the economy, but climate change costs the economy more. So keep an eye out for that. Now, you've got a very aptly titled book.
This is our book segment.
The book segment.
Reading segment, watching segment.
Video watch segment will come back next week. This is the book segment. End Times, very aptly titled book. Can you let us know about that book, please?
So End Times, subtitle Elites, Counter-Elites and the Path of Political Disintegration by Peter Turchin, who grew up in Russia as a scientist, now working in the US. It's a book that came out a couple of years ago that I've been reading about, but one of the very great advantages of doing the mainstream is it's encouraging me to read the books that I've read about.
That's good.
So I can talk to you about them. So our podcast has encouraged me to go and read Peter Turchin's End Times. And when it first was released, it was became well known for a phrase that, again, many people would have come across, this idea of elite overproduction leading to a crisis. So Turchin's argument is that, and he comes from a broad centre-left perspective, but his argument is that societies go into crisis when the number of people or the proportion of people of the population wanting to join elites is greater than the number of elite positions available to them. So he defines elites as, of course, politicians, business leaders, and I like his sort of semi-Marxist approach to aspects of this, which is elites are those who have some sort of power, economic power, social power, cultural power. And if you have studied at university, if you have, especially in the US, if you have incurred massive debts, if you have been brought up to believe that one day you will be exercising massive cultural, social, economic power, telling people how to think and what to do, and when you can't enter that class, then resentment will grow and you will want to break the system in whatever way that you would like to break the system. So he started as a scientist studying insects and the behaviour of insects. And he talks about this, and one of the criticisms of Turchin's work is his attempt, as so many people have done over literally thousands of years, to develop a science of history. So his argument is if you crunch enough data,
you figure it out.
You'll figure it out. You'll know when the French Revolution will happen. You'll know when the Russian Revolution occurs. You can predict the rise of the Nazis. And so that his argument is that if you actually look at the data, that ultimately human action and agency washes out, and that you can predict, or not so much predict, but you can anticipate these social turmoils. And about a dozen years ago, he actually said social turmoil was coming in the 2020s. So that's what he hangs his hat on. But his point that elites, whether you are part of the elite or wanting to be part of the elite, give rise to resentment, give rise to anger against the system, give rise to all the things we've just been talking about in this podcast, leading to social turmoil, I think is very real. Does he provide any solutions? No, he doesn't. He calls it end times, but he says once that social turmoil will resolve itself in some way, you will then come to a period of stability. And then that turmoil will begin again. And that is a cycle that sometimes, according to cultures, could go over decades or it could go over centuries. His view is that we are coming to the end of the time of the stability and security that we've enjoyed basically since the Second World War, and that the cycles of turmoil are speeding up and becoming shorter.
Well, it certainly feels that way, for sure. Was he the guy that also wrote about the turnings, the fourth turning?
That's someone else.
Someone else.
We're going to do that next week.
We'll do that next week. But that seems like a similar...
Again, the cycles of history goes back to Herodotus. But it's an interesting discussion of what is giving rise to this, well, let's call it turmoil, conflict. What is giving rise to this idea that you should burn the Australian flag? What is giving rise that you will support a terrorist organisation rather than the only democracy in the Middle East? What is giving rise to the fact that we seek to overturn human biology? What is giving rise to the fact that the argument of equality, that we're all equal, should now be overturned to privilege some groups rather than others? And I think it's thought-provoking. I am not, as a someone who did economic history, who reads a lot of history, I'm not sure that human action allows us to crunch the data like he does for insects and come to a conclusion as to the date of the next revolution. But it's an interesting, provocative book that I think is very valuable. The other point to make, and this is his centre-left politics coming through, for him, income inequality is a measure that gives rise to uncertainty and turmoil. I think that's right. And he says there was nothing exceptional about the rise of Trump. When you look at the decline of the US, and this is, again, you can be left-wing or right-wing. If you look at the decline of the middle class, if you look at economic stagnation as the rich, as he says, not just the rich are getting richer, the billionaires are getting richer.
Yeah.
And everyone else is suffering. The rise of Trump is completely predictable and able to be anticipated. Whether or not his solutions of social democracy work, which is basically where he's coming at, I question, because it's social democracy and the left that have put us in this position. I mean, what he doesn't quite come at is the globalisation, the social democracy that he embraces, is making the billionaires richer, has impoverished the middle class. So it has to be something else than, I think, the economic solution that he is suggesting. But interesting, fascinating book, and really glad that I read it. I pulled it off my bookshelf and I said, I need something interesting to talk to Dan about.
Thank you. For me, it's not so much income inequality, but wealth inequality is a better, because that captures housing values, financial assets, and so forth. Thank you. That's interesting.
And that wealth and income inequality goes to what we were talking about, which is, do you believe for the future generations will be better off? Is your life getting better? I think your life is getting better. You're going to talk about this.
Yeah, my life is getting better.
Talk about it.
I was going to say, who it's going to be the end times for, don't you, coming up?
No, Dan, who?
Collingwood, Saturday night. I was on Paul Murray on Sunday night, and he asked for our predictions for the week. And I said that Collingwood are going to get smashed by the Crows.
But he's NRL. Has he heard of Collingwood?
Yeah, he knows who Collingwood are.
Okay.
He's a good, well-rounded journalist.
He's a great Australian. He's NRL and AFL.
I'm hoping to get up to the man cave one day there. But Saturday night, Crows at the top of the ladder. I think Pies are second at the moment. We're going to demolish them. It'll be the end times for Collingwood. Yeah,
well, I'm less interested in Collingwood, and I'm more interested in the decision the AFL has made, I think, yesterday or yesterday. The most woke political not just the most woke political organisation, the most woke politically correct organisation in Australia that talks about respect and tolerance and equality and zero tolerance for drugs, in most circumstances, has I just laugh. Has got Snoop Dogg, the American rapper, to perform at the AFL Grand Final.
Don't you reckon it was just a bunch of these CEO boomer types in a boardroom who'd seen a menu log ad and gone, this guy must be cool with the kids?
Have they looked at any of his lyrics? I said to you, and you told me before that you hadn't seen the movie Training Day. Great movie. He's fantastic in that. He's got a little cameo. But I look forward to all of the groups that the AFL supports analysing Snoop Dogg's lyrics for their misogyny, for their glorification of drug use, for their glorification of violence and crime, and calling upon the AFL to rescind its invitation to Snoop Dogg because of the example he sets for Australian young people.
You know what I'm looking forward to? I reckon the smoking ceremony and the acknowledgement to country is going to be lit. I can't wait to watch that.
Well, if
Why-
Collingwood or Adelaide are in the grand final and the Western Bulldogs are not, there'll be something for me to watch.
Bring back. Too bad we can't bring back Slim Dusty singing Waltz and Matilda at the 1987 VFL Grand Final.
If only.
If only. All right, John, thanks for the chat. We'll catch up again in a couple of weeks.